However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Joining me tonight is Karen Holton, ET experiencer and creator of the Quantum Health Transformation Program. In the last 30 minutes, we'll be opening up the Paranormal Radio app phone lines for you to call in, and that number is 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. So please share your thoughts and experiences with us live on the air, or you can tag me on Twitter at paranormal_now, or on Instagram at paranormal now, and on Facebook, Paranormal Now Radio, for show updates, comments, questions. I pop in there on occasion. Facebook, as you know, I'm not on there quite as much as I used to be for my own mental health. But I will be checking in from time to time, posting as I normally do. All right. So tonight's guest, we're going to be talking about some very interesting subjects, a sort of amalgamation of subjects, ET visitations, communication, the quantum reality and metaphysical connection. These are all topics that are often talked about separately. But tonight, with Karen Holton, we'll be talking about all of these and how they relate to each other, and then how do they relate to us as individuals, and how we can improve ourselves and hopefully make this a better world for all of us. Of course, there are a lot of promises made out there and paths laid before us, and then we have to be smart on choosing what we want to believe, what we follow, and what we think are most effective. So we'll let Karen tonight share her ideas about what that is and how to best guide us into the future of humanity. It's quite the task. So we'll hear what Karen has to say tonight. And as a friendly reminder, again, in the last 30 minutes, call in the Paranormal Radio app lines. That number is 85-KGRA Live or 855-472-5483. It's kind of like linking your brain to our worldwide audience, so we can hear your inquiring mental processes, but without the invasive technology like Elon Musk's Neuralink. So you get the benefit of Neuralink without the invasion. All right, our guest tonight, Karen Holton, is a social justice activist and judge for the Natural and Common Law Tribunal for Public Health and Safety. Karen is also an ET experiencer, educator, channel guide, and ascension coach. Her professional experience includes coaching, counseling, and public speaking. Before becoming an exopolitical ambassador within the Intergalactic Resettlement program, we'll ask her what that is, Karen spent over a decade researching and educating the public about the nefarious global agenda here on Earth. Soon after, she received a spiritual download, and as a result, Karen switched gears and created the Quantum Health Transformation Program to assist others to heal, evolve, and thrive. Karen believes that self-love and self-care build the foundation for personal activism as we become the change we wish to see in the world. Karen holds a bachelor degree with a distinction in social work from University of Victoria 2004, where she focused on sociology, gender studies, psychology, addictions, and family counseling. Karen is the founder of Vancouver Island Alternative Lifestyle Services since 2007. Although she began her private practice on Vancouver Island, BC, she is currently residing in Red Deer, Alberta, Canada. You can check out Karen's unique content on her YouTube channel, Karen Holton TV, and enjoy her upcoming presentation at the Forbidden Knowledge News Con, April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. Karen, welcome to Paranormal Now.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So there's a wide gamut of topics that you cover. So I'm not sure how we're going to get to it all tonight, but we will do our best. I think what I'm most curious about is, in your bio, you describe alternative. Can you tell us what that is? Because that's a pretty loose term. What we're doing here is alternative, right? What does that mean for you and specifically this program?
In my opinion, alternative is anything that's outside of the box. So in the box is the mainstream, the usual sources that people tend to go for, external sources of information from experts, that kind of thing. And outside of the box is where the alternative is. And the funniest thing about it, and this has got to do with the whole quantum nature of reality, is when we step outside of the box, we're all friends. We all get along. We're all on the same page, even if we have very, very different takes on life, if we have different spiritual beliefs, the common threads are there. It's quite a fascinating journey.
So how did you get started on the spiritual journey? Were you religious growing up? Were you, taught any kind of spiritual paradigm, or did you build your own?
Well, eventually I built my own, but I kept having these experiences. I found even as a child, I was able to communicate with bugs. I was able to communicate with fish. I was able to communicate with animals and plants. And I had all these amazing experiences. Mm-hmm. But my parents were really into shutting all that nonsense down, from their perspective, because in those days, especially, it really mattered what other people thought of you. And if you wanted to get ahead in the mainstream society, you couldn't be weird. And then here I am, just all about weird. I got to tell you the funny thing, I still communicate with all those things. For instance, I can go out into the woods and I just ask the mosquitoes and the no-see-ums and the different kind of bugs to go and feed off someone else and give me a break, and they never bite me. So, just as one excuse. So I've had all those experiences. And I also was acutely aware that there were unseen beings that surround us. And, but I couldn't find any support. I couldn't find anybody that would let me talk about those things. And so I kept going to church because I kept thinking it was God, which kind of it is, it's universal mm-hmm. consciousness. And so I kept going to different churches. So I went to just a huge spectrum of churches. Throughout my life, up until I was about 21 years old, I even tried the Hare Krishnas and the Children of God and, Catholicism, United Church, Anglican. I tried all the churches. And the one thing they all had in common, besides the fact that they all thought they were right and everyone else was wrong, which I thought was really weird. But they also were very much against hearing about the kinds of experiences I was having. And so I guess it's kind of like being gaslit by society. I actually started to buy into the concept that maybe there was something wrong with me. Maybe I was imagining my experiences. I didn't know. And there was certainly no internet to go to for alternative information. So I tried a lot of different religions, and finally, by the time I was about 21, I joined a fairly strict fundamentalist Christian religion, and I just threw myself into it, and I did everything I could to not be weird. Mm-hmm. I got married, I had children, I really tried to fit in, but it became such a burden for me to stay censored all the time. And the odd slip or whatever, I'd have to deal with people. And I got to tell you, this is just my experience, but I found so much hypocrisy amongst these Christian religions that were supposed to be all about Jesus and all about love. And yet really what it seemed to be all about was making converts and staying within that paradigm and obeying rules, and the rules are always changing depending on, whose perspective. Mm-hmm. And I found actually a lot of order, but not a lot of sincere, heartfelt love. And I found very few people who actually act like Christ, which I thought was pretty weird. So eventually I just threw the whole thing away and said, no, this is no good. I said to God or to the universe, I said, I need a paradigm that's big enough that all these other paradigms fit inside of it. I need a really big, comprehensive paradigm. And so what happened is, and I've always been a researcher and I'm always questioning, is I started to compare the common threads. through all the belief systems, the Eastern belief systems, the Western belief systems, and I found certain things were in common no matter where I went. I went, aha, now I found my paradigm. And then, of course, it stretched out into exopolitical work and all kinds of things, which I never imagined would happen to me. And I don't even know why it happens for me because, I'm not that smart. I'm not that beautiful. I'm certainly not popular. Like, I don't have, all the things that you would think that a person would have to be chosen for this kind of work. But then I also realized later that I'm not that special. We all have this potential. So my mission, I suppose, is to share what I know with other people, to inspire them to go within and to find their own harmony amongst this great, big, wonderful omniverse. What I mean by omniverse is that includes the universe, the multiverse, and then all the spiritual components, angels and elementals and all those things, that even the things that go bump in the night, they all got a place. And so that's what happens. So anyway, I'm don't worry about covering this topic or that topic, because for me, everything I talk about, it's like all roads lead to Rome. They all lead back to the same basic principles, ideas, messages. Yeah, so I got to tell you, I feel like the luckiest woman in the world because of my experiences.
Your weirdness is more than welcome here. In this KGRA DB verse, yes, it's like home. And there's something to be said about that, right? Being around other people who have similar interests, and not feeling so much like an outcast or different. And it's funny. I use that word in its old sense, that in this community of people who think differently, who would otherwise in society be kind of looked down upon for the ideas that they entertain, we treat other people, like the other, right? Mm-hmm. And I find it odd that there's that cross intersection between this paranormal world and the outside world, where people from in this world treat others, less than. And I always liked, what I liked about the paranormal world in general is that it encourages us to keep an open mind and to entertain each other's ideas. I mean, like we were saying, in the Bible, there's a dragon. There's you have a Leviathan, you have giants, you have Nephilim or what have you coming down and mating with earthlings. It is so fantastical in the literal sense, that I find it odd that people think what we're talking about is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I think most people that go to church have never read the Bible. That's one thing, so.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a blind eye turned to all those other aspects of the scriptures, whether it be the Bible, the Torah, and the Vedas, of course. That's a whole other story there. And then to think that my idea is the only one, because your idea is just nuts, So what one idea do you resonate most with? Is there a particular path, Buddhism, Christianity, or anything in general? Is there anything that you draw the most from?
Well, no, not anymore. But I got to tell you, I know this is going to sound really weird, but I believe in everything all at once, and I believe in nothing all at once, because our puny brains can only conceive of a certain amount. And after having contact with higher beings and learning how they, at least the group that I'm involved with, I can't speak for all of them, of course, but based on my own personal experiences, the only universal thing is love, that harmonic frequency of love, and it's amazing. And so I just can't, I draw from all of it. And the beauty of the way that I see things is that I don't ever have to have conflict with anyone. I can give dignity and respect to everybody, regardless of what they believe. Now, I may not agree with it. I may not understand it, but I'm not looking at it from their perspective. They have a unique perspective. And then getting back to the whole concept of universal consciousness, which is what I would call God, I think that we are divinity diversified. And so we're all a little piece of God experiencing life and evolving and making mistakes and stumbling forward, trying to, find our way. And I'm sure in some of more in the Eastern philosophies, it's kind of a game. It's kind of like a playland. And so that's how I like to keep everything in suspension and moving and not static and not too 3D. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but if you're someone who's in a state where they're depressed, they're feeling lost, they have anxiety, it's easy to say that, like, you, Karen, believe in this omniverse of philosophy, and you embrace it all. But how does that help the person who's trying to just get a handle on all this? Because you have to start somewhere.
Yep, you do. And I think where we start is within ourselves, and being honest with who we are, and taking a look at how we think and how we view other things, and being open to transformative experiences. So what I would say, and I got to tell you, I'm not perfect, and I don't live in a perfect world. I still deal with anxiety and depression and all of those things. But the thing I really want to encourage people to do is to actually reach out for contact to whatever you feel most comfortable with. So for instance, my first huge major contact experience was with beings that I perceived as angels, and I was very comfortable with angels. Mm-hmm. Later on, I started having some contact experiences that I couldn't explain, that had to do with elementals. And then I kind of got into fairy folk and a lot of that kind of stuff, because that was safe. It took me a long time to deprogram from Christian religion. And also it took me, and I'm still dealing with deprogramming from a sense of shame that I think we're all programmed with, because it makes us more controllable if we have shame. And so working our way out of all of that, it takes a whole lifetime, maybe more than one lifetime, maybe a whole bunch of lifetimes. I'm sorry, I can't remember your question.
No, that's all right. We'll continue. But I do have a great question here from Carl. And in regard to your earlier comments, I wonder what Karen Holton would say are the events or elements that remove that box from the way we behave, that reveal our kindred spirit.
Now, I'm not sure about the question. Is the question of what are the elements that remove the box?
What are the events or elements that remove that box?
For me, trauma. Oh my God, trauma. I hate trauma, by the way. I hate trauma. I'll run from trauma. But trauma does something. It kind of opens up our vision in to see other things. So if people are traveling along in their mainstream lives and nothing terribly goes wrong for them, there isn't that enzymatic action that triggers change and different ways of looking at things. And so for me, when I experience trauma, injustice, suffering, all of those things were fertile soil for me to go, oh my God, I'll do anything to get out of this, including raise my awareness and be open to other beings, other things, other ways of seeing things. I mean, when you think about it, what really happens when we go out into the world is we have 5 senses that imperfectly take in data. Then they're filtered through our own filter system. And so so what's out there, we don't even know what's real. What happens is our senses take in the information. It goes into a distortion, a distorted lens. We all have distorted lenses, right? And so we're perceiving the external probably quite differently than what it actually is. And so it's kind of like being blind in the woods in some ways. And eventually we start to get our sight when we start to trust ourselves, when we start to trust unseen forces that we can ask for help. And that's the other thing. I'm a firm believer, and my experiences have taught me that higher beings, they don't come and interfere. They don't swoop in and save. Well, sometimes, but mostly not. mostly what happens is we have to ask, because this is our realm. This is our 3D human training ground. And if we want help, we need to ask for it. And boy, I sure ended up in some real pickles, and I needed to ask for help. But I also had to say, I got myself into this. I can get myself out of this too. So there's a whole bunch of factors involved in this.
Yeah. How much does that align with the law of attraction, prayer, and versus your own self-efforts?
It's actually all part of the same thing, because the sense of self is much bigger and more complex than what most of us imagine.
Okay.
And so one of the wonderful things that happened for me was I saw the movie called The Secret, which was sort of my introduction to the law of attraction.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a funny thing, when we start to honor the body temple, when we start to honor ourselves and take good care of ourselves, it's kind of, for me, I had to basically grow an internal parent that was missing for me.
Sure. Yeah.
And I'm just saying how it was. I don't think I'll ever really grow up, but, I had to develop an internal parent, the parent that says, okay, I know you really want to have a chocolate fudge sundae, but that is not in your best interest, and you're not going to have it. And that kind of parenting I had to do for myself, so that I could have a chance to have the kind of body, because this is our instrument here on Earth, that could pick up information from other realms, other kinds of help that I was asking for. So I guess really it always starts with us.
There are different voices. There are voices from the outside telling us what is best for us. But then there's the voice inside of us that knows what's best from us, because we've lived, we've experienced, we know what works for us. But either way, sometimes we have a hard time listening to any of those voices, particularly our own, even though when we know, like you said, like for me, it's like, exercise more, I feel better. I know that I feel better when I exercise more. Why don't I exercise more? Because how do you break that sort of that bad habit? Because we get into routines, we get into ways of thinking, like, tracks that we get set on, and it's really difficult to get back onto a different track that we know is better for ourselves.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how bad we want it. What do we want, and how bad do we want it, and what are we prepared to pay to get it? I don't have any simple solutions for people, but I do know that we all have that inside. And so what happens, at least for me, is I live where it's very, very cold. In fact, recently we even had temperatures of -40 to -50 degrees below 0 Celsius, which is actually quite a bit colder in Fahrenheit. And I can't get out and walk. And if it's super icy, I can't get out and walk safely. And so I sometimes struggle with the exercise thing, right? So what I do is I say to myself, okay, right now is not conducive for you to get out there and have a walk in the fresh air as much as you'd love to. So now we're going to do something else. Another aspect of my health I can focus on and take care of. So I started having nice hot mineral baths, with lots of Epsom salts and sea salt and some essential oils. And so I get into the bathtub, and not only is it deeply relaxing, it's deeply grounding. It's another way of doing earthing, because all those minerals in the water are wonderful for attracting electricity and energy, not to mention the fact that water itself has consciousness, but that's another whole story. And you're in the tub, and the plumbing is grounded. So your grounding in your house is connected to your plumbing, and it goes into the ground, right? So that's something that I could do that sort of replaced that until the weather started warming up and I could start going out. And now I'm actually doing both, going for walks and taking the bath, because I just love it so much. It's just the perfect way to kind of collapse all the energies of the day and relax. And you just get into the most deep state of relaxation, which, by the way, is also the perfect time for connecting with your guides.
All right. Well, we can talk more about connecting with the guides and later on the ET connection with Karen Holton. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now. Thank you all for joining us. Hang in there. On the other side of this break, we will be back with a continuous fascinating conversation.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Thank you for hanging out with us tonight. Our guest is Karen Holton. And Karen, I have a question from the comment section I want to get to first before we continue on. And that is, what is the best way to connect to source without very much effort from Earth Radio?
Oh, that's such a good question. It's easier than you think. I got to tell you, it's easier than you think. One thing that I found out that I learned early on is that universal consciousness, which is also known as Holy Spirit and known as Chi and Prana and a whole bunch of other things, sometimes people call it God, whatever, it's always there at your present state of consciousness. So that means you don't have to become somebody else. You don't have to stop doing things you're doing. You don't have to start doing things you think you need to do. You don't have to do anything. You are absolutely loved just the way you are right now. Doesn't matter if you're not happy with who you are right now. Universal consciousness is always there at your present state of consciousness. So we don't have to join a religion or a cult or a church. We can read books if we want to. We can, check in with other people that are on similar journeys, see how they're doing it, get ideas, but it's all already there and waiting for you. So it's really just about saying, I am open to the experience. I want it. Show me. And what's really kind of cool is you can test it. You can say, I want a sign, and I don't just want some puny little sign that kind of confuses me and I'm not sure if it's real or not. I want a sign. I need a big sign. And you can tell universal consciousness what you need. And so you start having these amazing things happen. Now, for a while, you think you're going a little bit crazy because you start noticing messages and license plates, and you start noticing things that you never noticed before. And you're interpreting that data where other people may not be even seeing it. And so the thing is that it's being interpreted in our own present state of consciousness so that we can identify it, so that we can see it. And that's where we get into not coincidences, but synchronicities. And we find that we're in the right place at the right time, or we just happen to watch a show and something we've been really pondering about comes on and we go, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed. And it's actually much easier than we think it is.
So you're not presenting like a system, right? Like a dogma. What you're presenting is something much more open.
Absolutely open. And when I didn't want to go to church anymore, I started saying at that time, I called it God. I said, I don't want to go to the church anymore. Don't make me go back. Please don't make me go back. Because I was fairly indoctrinated, and I have visions and I have lucid dreams. And so they just kind of roll like a little video, right, in my imagination. And when I'm seeing a vision, I stop, even though I'm awake, fully conscious, present, and have my eyes open. That stops and I see the vision takes over. Anyway, and it was of a whole bunch of different chairs. And it was like, what kind of chair do you want, Karen? Do you want to sit on a hardwood pew? And I went, no, I don't want to do that. Would you like to sit in a recliner chair? Oh, yeah, that's a little bit better. Would you like to sit in? You make the framework. You have complete creative freedom to create the framework. So that's what's so beautiful about it. And everyone, not everyone, but a lot of different so-called gurus out there saying, do what I do. And I'm saying, no. Don't do what I do. Take inspiration from what I do. You can use it as a jumping off point. Mm-hmm. But no. You decide what you want. And a lot of us don't even know what we want because we've never been given that kind of freedom.
Well, a lot of people in recovery programs experience this because there is no one religion, right? Yeah, so you have all these different people with different ideas, and they can come together and share ideas and grow together, but not actually believe in the exact same thing. Therefore, there's no, one person that tells you what to believe or what path to take necessarily. So is that a healthier way, or does it matter? Is it better to have something that's much more open-ended, multidisciplined, or something that, like someone, finds, peace in their particular religion?
If you're happy with your belief system, then why change? You can do it all within your belief system, even if you're in an orthodox or a fundamentalist type religion. You can still do it there. You can do it wherever you're at. Present state of consciousness. The second thing is that the guru is within. You want your own inner guru. Now, come on, doesn't it make more sense instead of having to go and pay money to someone or go to church or follow all these different rules and have to do all of that to get answers? Why not just have them from within? Because our higher selves are connected to everything. And so why not just learn to go for the answers within? It's all in there. In fact, we can do anything, go anywhere, be anything, and we access it all from within. It's hilarious. It's almost like it's hidden in plain sight.
So are you saying that when you find that quiet place, that's all the answers are there?
Yeah, they're all there. They're all there. All the answers. Anything you want to know, any experience you want to have, it's all available. There is nothing saying no to you. It's just that we're born into a construct, and the construct has an agenda. And that agenda includes us not finding our own sovereignty. Mm-hmm. Because if we find our own sovereignty and if we find all our own answers within, we don't need them anymore. Look at how much money is poured into churches. I'm sorry, but I think it's a bit disgusting, the wealth that some of these churches have. And yet they're people that are coming and putting a penny into the contribution box. They're going without food. They don't even have proper housing. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I got a problem. I got a bit of a problem with that. I'm a granny. I want all the grandbabies all over the world to have everything they need to be healthy and happy.
Sure, I understand the disparity there, especially more particularly in certain instances or churches, if you will. But those communities do service as well. But yes, I have people that say, "Hey, why are churches tax free?" I guess because that money is supposed to go towards the common good. But if the churches are getting deep pockets and bank accounts, then maybe they shouldn't be tax free, right? Maybe those taxes, if you tax a religious institution, that would be recalibrated somehow and shifted into another funding for community service. I don't know, but you're right. I mean, they shouldn't be making riches. That's for sure. Especially, I was raised Catholic, and that was not the teaching of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So there is a lot of contradiction there. Now, of course, just like any enterprise, in order to do things and get things done, you have to have a nest egg, right? Like whether it's a business or a religious institution. If you want to organize, if you want to get things done, if you want to travel, take people places somewhere, then you have to have funds for that. So I understand that, but then it gets really tricky, right? Because then how do you go from church to church and say, you're doing this right, you're doing this wrong? It's very complicated. So do people say the same thing to you? Do they say, well, what are you doing for the community?
No, actually, I don't really actually get challenged by anybody for some reason, but, and they can challenge me if they want to. But what I have done is I have taken the information that's been given to me by my guides, by my ET friends, and I have worked very hard to compile that into a format that's free and available to everybody. Well, I shouldn't say everybody. You have to sort of understand English, and you need access to the internet. But that's about it. But and I've worked for years getting this material out there. It's really interesting when I'm working on it. I'll make some mistakes in the grammar and this and that. My guides will correct me and say, no, you have to word it this way. It's very specific how it has to be worded and everything. It's funny. But anyway, so what I did was I compiled. Let me just explain quickly what a download means to me.
Sure, and also if you could share that and what your guides are actually.
Oh, okay. Let me just start with the guides because This is cool. And you can pick your own guides. You can pick anything you want. So I have guides that are what I call extraterrestrial because they're physical and they're not from Earth. And then there are my guides that are interdimensionals, and interdimensionals are not corporeal. They are, they're made out of, I don't know what they're made out of, but they're not physical. Okay. Then there's ultradimensionals, and ultradimensionals are non-physical beings that are indigenous to Earth, just like we are. And then there's angels and divas. And they can be actually, they can manifest physically or non-physically, depending on who they are, what they want to do, all that kind of jazz. Then there's also elementals, which includes all the, I would say the cryptids would be classified as elementals. I'm not an expert. I'm just telling you how I understand it. Okay. And so there can be fairies and the fairy realms and the gnomes and all that. That all overlaps actually with our insect world that we experience in three-dimensional reality as well. And so my guides are made up of, and my guides are also my higher self. So myself in the eighth dimensional reality actually interfaces with me, but also a lot of different me's in the multiverse. It gets a bit complicated.
Okay, let's just pause there for a moment because I can't imagine what it would be like in your head if all these people started talking to you at the same time, or if you have like a round table discussion, right, with all these different entities, and then you have multiplicity of yous. So how does one go from one to the next?
Me? I just go with it. I can kind of tell. Like, for instance, I have a friend, I call him Bob. I have no idea what his real name is because these beings are so far advanced to us and they're in different realms. And I could just drive myself crazy trying to figure out exactly what they are and I would never get it right. But anyway, I got to tell you, Bob, he looks a bit like a gray ET. And when I want to access the big ship where I have spent a fair amount of time and training, I go through him and he's able to somehow boost my consciousness and able to facilitate lucid dreaming, remote viewing, which I think remote viewing, lucid dreaming, and astral projection are kind of facets of the same phenomenon. So he helps me to do that. And all I have to do is ask for him. Now, when it's information just coming in, I know by the context roughly where it's coming from. But, if you're familiar with Abraham Hicks, she doesn't separate them into all these different beings. She just calls them Abraham. Because the one thing that they all have in common is they're operating on the love harmonic. They give you the most beautiful feeling. That kind of leads into a lot of people want to know, how can I tell good energy from bad? How can I tell good ET from bad ET? Well, it's all about how you feel. And when you felt being in that beautiful love harmonic, there's nothing like it. And lower beings can't go there. They're basically, regardless of what a being chooses for its reality, it's very much in frequencies. It's in different frequencies and different kind of genres of frequency. And so the lower beings that cause a lot of really negative ET experiences or negative paranormal experiences, that's a fairly dense, low, fairly attached to Earth type of frequency. Whereas the angels have this very, very light, delicate energy. So really, you can just tell by the way you feel whether you're in good hands or not. And it doesn't matter. Like, I'm just, in my puny human brain, I'm trying to make sense of it all. So I'm calling it angels and elementals. But what's really, really going on? Who knows? That's beyond my capability. So I go by how it makes me feel. And if it makes me feel like I'm loved and it's gentle, so we all get those voices in our head that are like the internal critic. Well, your guides would never talk to you that way. But you got to shut up the critic long enough to be able to hear the other options that are coming in. And that's the other thing, is that our brains are not just this fat and water and electrical signals and memory. Mm-hmm. Our brains also are like tuners on a radio station. We can alter our receiver wavelength to pick up different kinds of beings. And that takes just a bit of practice. Really, all of this just takes a bit of practice. So it means stepping outside of the construct. So we're not going absolutely insane watching, the different conspiracies and things that are going wrong on the planet. We can't be all involved in drama and what this person's doing and thinking and wearing. Like really, it's at that point where we're able to grow up spiritually to the point where we start to recognize we need to have, for lack of a better word, meditate. There's many ways of doing that. Meditation, spending time in self-reflection. Then we're starting to get into those realms where we're altering our receiver wavelength. And then
what about our own trauma? So how much can we work on ourselves? Because earlier you were saying that, you find that center, right? That quiet place in your mind, and answers come. So if you have that, why do we need the other guides or divas or elementals? Do we need that, is what my question is, I guess, essentially.
I don't know. To be honest, I don't know. All I know is from my own experience and my own kind of weird way of being. And for me, this is how it works. Now, for someone else, it might work quite differently. And so, for instance, you might have someone that does a lot of meditation. They've really worked on cleaning up their body temple and detoxify. They're very careful what they eat. They're very careful what energy they tap into. And they advance very, very quickly. And they may not need all of this stuff, angels and ETs and all that jazz. They may not need any of that. But me, I needed it because I needed a lot of help. I was pretty screwed up.
Well, why were you screwed up? What were you struggling with?
I had some horrible experiences in my life. I'm not going to get into too much, but sure. I will say, I'll say what I've already been public about. And the reason is because this is nasty stuff. Nobody really the people, again, I don't want to just.
Well, some things don't have to be said out loud again, over and over and over again. I understand that. Absolutely.
But basically, like for instance, I had a mother who didn't have any ability to empathize or have compassion. She didn't have any connection to her children. We were like objects, right? So that kind of was a problem. And then myself and my younger brother ended up in a very abusive foster home. I was 4 and he was 2. Mm-hmm. And we were literally tortured and abused and kept in a room in the basement for 6 months, starved. Like, it was really bad. Yeah. And and my mom came and got us, And we had a new daddy, a stepdaddy, and guess what? He was like her. He couldn't empathize or have any compassion either, right? And he did weird mind control stuff on us and all this stuff because he just because he wanted to and he could. And so, you know, growing up, I was a little glitchy. And then what happens is when we have trauma, sometimes it sets us up for more trauma. So for a long time,
we all have trauma. We all do.
We all do.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I was just pretty screwed up. I mean, I've had layers of addictions to deal with, alcohol being the most obvious.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I haven't drank now for years and years. I can be around people that drink, doesn't bother me at all because it's once you dealt with something, you deal with it, it's done. But so I don't know, but I have come to understand that it was because of those terrible experiences that I learned. It pushed me to the point where I learned to open up to unseen forces, because children need love. Children need care. And if they're not getting that, they die. And if we want to survive, we have to open up to love and to care from some source. So you
how do you feel about tough love? You hear that expression all the time.
Yeah,
right?
I know. I have mixed feelings. To be honest, I have mixed feelings about it.
Mm-hmm.
Because it means different things to different people. But I definitely think that we all benefit when we recognize and exercise our boundaries. So if you want to look at tough love that way, that we have boundaries, that we have a right to stand up for and to set for ourselves, because we don't just live in a society, we also have like a sphere around us of space that's our realm, our domain, and we have a responsibility to take good care of ourselves and to not let people do things that mess with us. And so I think that that can be another way of looking at tough love. Me, I'm kind of soft and squishy, and I just want to be good to everybody. I'm very motherly, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. And plus, it might not be my job to correct them. It might not be my job to train them, depending on who you're talking about, right? That's their journey. My journey is to make sure I'm the best Karen I can be, not the best everyone else around me. That's not my business.
No, you can't be a caretaker for absolutely everybody. That's too much to take on for any one person. But you said that once you deal with it, you're done. But I know addiction's like really tough, and people relapse over and over again. So, is that what you mean? Like you reached some point where you were able to just it's not an issue anymore, or?
Everything works together. So I'm going to give you an example. I had a hell of a time quitting smoking cigarettes, okay? I'd quit 1,000 times. But eventually I was able to quit cigarettes. And then I developed a bit of an allergy, so I don't like even being around it. Alcohol was a little bit different. Alcohol was really tough. And I did do lots of periods of time where I was sober. I did AA and I did all those things, especially when my kids were younger, because I knew I couldn't drink and be a good mother. I just knew it, right? But then after my kids kind of grew up, I kind of got back into it and stuff. So the way that I dealt with alcohol was to change my diet and alkalize my system. And when I did that, I couldn't drink anymore. I had no desire to. And if I did, it just gave me such a terrible headache that it just wasn't worth it. And so that's how I was able to quit drinking, was by alkalizing my body. So it's a funny thing. You go to AA and what do they tell you to do? They tell you to go out and consume massive amounts of sugar, because sugar stimulates the opioid centers of the brain that alcohol and cocaine and all those other feel-good drugs. They stimulate that area of the brain. So you're going out and you're eating all this sugar and you're eating all these candies, you're drinking all this coffee and you're pouring all this sugar into your coffee. To me, that's just substituting one addiction for another, and it makes it really hard. But as soon as this was my toughest addiction actually, was to get off refined carbohydrates, which include sugar. They all turn into sugar in your body. As soon as I stopped hammering the opioid center of my brain, it had a chance to settle down and heal, and I didn't want those things anymore.
Yeah. Well, I know with the sugar, when people are first getting sober, it helps, right? It's like, because they're on that precipice of going back out again. So it's kind of like a little bridge, a little ladder to get to the next level. But you're right. I mean, you don't want to keep eating sugar, and coffee and unhealthy diets, because then that can lead you into a whole other lifestyle. I mean, that can be harmful. Although I guess the justification often is it's better this than where I was before. But it's interesting that you're speaking of it in terms of of resolving your addiction through a physical balancing of your body. So for everybody listening here, what we're talking about tonight, we're not saying that this is the solution for you. This is Karen's experience. So you have to find out what is best for you if you're dealing with addiction or depression or whatever it is right now. So Karen, it seems to me that even in these programs, the encouragement of reaching out to a higher power is effective. It helps people. And for you, it's like higher powers, right? So you're able to kind of use all these different forces to help you, which is not unlike life in general, right? Sometimes you need a little crutch, or sometimes you need guidance from here. Sometimes you need this information. And that, there's all these branches of these fruits that we can use to help ourselves become better people. So, and that's all fascinating. But then we get to this ET agenda that you mentioned. So I do want to not pass that by and cover that when we get back on the other side of this break. But, in general, before we go, are there good ETs? Are there bad ETs? What's your take on that?
I've only had positive experiences. I've had very, very small experiences with what I would call negative. And, but they don't like hanging around me because I like to hang out with the really powerful beings that are my friends, and I just don't get bothered much. So I can't speak from personal experience there. I do believe, though, in everyone's experience. I validate everyone's experience, and some people have really negative experiences. Sure. So I can't say that doesn't happen. But again, it's frequency related. Maybe when we come back, I could tell you about how I got myself into a state where my vibrational frequency was quite low, and what that attracted into my life.
Yes,
that really taught me a lot.
Let's talk about frequency related to all of this, because it kind of sounds like that's the thing that connects everything, right? Including all these other species and entities out there. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on KGRA Radio. Thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. Every Sunday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be back on the Inverted Upside Down.
Mainstream media's most wanted. KGRAradio.com.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host. Tonight with me is Karen Holton, and we are covering so much. Do you keep up to date with show posts like this or in the future? Please go to @paranormal_now on Twitter, follow, and I'll keep you posted on the future shows, and also on kgradb.com, the new website. It really looks great. So if you can go there, check that out, save it in your browser as a favorite, or copy and paste it onto your desktop for easy access. And of course, if you could please follow me on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/paranormalpop. And I'll have new content coming up in the coming months that I think that you will really appreciate. And of course, Karen Holton, please go out there and check out her website, which is KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. Karen, where can people find you on social media?
Well, I'm on Facebook, and I have also a new backup channel on Odyssey, which is also Karen Holton TV. And I'm also have a radio show on Tuesdays at 1:00 on People for People Radio.
Okay, great. We left it off with frequencies and connecting to ET. So we have a question from Kathleen in the chat, and that is, when did you first meet an ET? I think this might be a good segue.
Well, this actually is also part of what I wanted to tell everybody about frequency. So back in the early 1990s, I found myself in a bad situation, and I was going through a very deep level of a grieving process. And I was so depressed and so sad. And I moved into this this little place that I was renting, and I started getting these urges that I can't describe any other way, but urges where I wanted to kill myself. And strangely, I wanted to do it in a very specific way. And it just wouldn't stop bothering me that I wanted to off myself. And then I had, and this is again, potatoes, what's an ET? But I'm going to tell you, that's when I had my angel experience. So that was my first really obvious experience. Now, before I tell you about the angel experience, I want to tell you that I ended up obviously not offing myself. And about a year later, I met a woman. And when she asked me where I lived and I told her, she says, "Oh my God, I was friends with a friend of mine is the mother of the guy who killed himself in that same place." And I went, wow, I didn't even know about that, right? So anyway, long story short, what happened was I went to such a low level of intense grieving that my frequency was really, really low. And I believe it left room for the imprint of the man who had committed suicide to influence me, which taught me a lot about how low I will let myself get under different circumstances. I'm not saying we all have control over that.
Sure.
But what happened to me was I was going to off myself, but that night I was in bed and I was bawling my eyes out and I just didn't want to live anymore. And all of a sudden I saw these points of light, and each point of light had light flashing out the side like wings. And it really got my attention. I got to tell you, I've never had an experience like that. It was so big and so intense. And a voice started to talk to me, and it was like 1,000 voices all speaking as one voice. And it said to me, it actually was very comforting. The voice told me that if I really was that unhappy, I could leave, that we actually have exit points in our life, that if we want to exit, and I guess, I don't know whether we would come back and do it again or what, I don't know, but that there were exit points, and that I could do that if I wanted to, but if I wanted to stick around, they would give me a helper. And I said, yeah, I feel really ripped off because I had all this trauma and I had all these bad things happen to me. And, I feel like I didn't really get a chance to live my life. I was just busy coping with everything. And they said, well, you can have a gift. We'll give you whatever you want. What do you want? And I went, oh my gosh, I don't know. I have to think about it. And they just said, let us know when you're ready. They've always been near ever since. I just feel their presence. So what happened was I was thinking for a couple of days, I was thinking, what do I want? Do I want beauty? Do I want wealth? Do I want power? I mean, what kind of a helper? I assumed that it was one of those kind of things, not a physical person, right? But they said I could have anything I want. So finally I thought, okay, I know what I want. I want wisdom. I want wisdom. I need wisdom, because without it, my life is just a train wreck. And I'm tired of having a train wreck life. And so this is really weird. They said to me, do you want the quick method or the slow method? And I was stupid. I was so naive. I should have asked more questions. And I said, oh, I want the quick method. In my mind, I thought they would just sort of magically pour that wisdom into me, and I would just know how to be wise. But what happened was they gave me all the life experiences I need to learn wisdom.
Not what you expected. It wasn't the Matrix download, right?
No, I did not get a Matrix download. I had to go through all kinds of my own stuff, making huge mistakes and everything till I learned. And that was part of the quick method. I guess if I chose the slow method, it would have been a bit more gentle. But anyway, I'm not sorry for any of it. But that was my first contact with other beings. It was really obvious. It was actually, it came across as being external to me. Mm-hmm. And then I was aware of some ET presence, but I wasn't really clear on what it was.
At the same time, you were aware of the presence?
No. This is much later. Okay, so now I'm talking about in the early 2000s. Okay. So come forward to the early 2000s. Well, no, not even later than that. This was around, 2010. I just started being kind of wanting to know more about extraterrestrials, just wanting to know more. And there was very little at the time on even YouTube. It was hard to even find that much information. And a lot of it just didn't resonate with me. And, but then I started having, I got a download. So let me just tell you what a download means for me. So I think I started telling you and then I went off on a tangent. So the download I received in an instant, and it's like a packet being dropped into my brain. Mm-hmm. And then as I go about my everyday life, the lessons and the information from this packet unfold, kind of like almost like an overlay over what I'm seeing with my five senses, okay. Right?
Yeah.
And so that was how I got the Quantum Health Transformation Program. And that was to help me because I needed to heal. I'd been through a lot of health issues and I really needed the healing. Sure. But anyway, then around, I don't know exactly when. I don't have discrete times where this started and that stopped. It's not like that. Everything is more of a process that just unfolds. So anyway, I started waking up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and I was keenly aware that I was in these meetings with these other beings that were not from around here. And that I wasn't there physically, but I was there, definitely there. And I would get embarrassed because I would think, okay, I don't know what's going on here, but I feel embarrassed to be getting up and going to the washroom during it, right? I go back to bed. And it was these meetings, and I would be waking up and I was really, really tired. Later, I found out that was when I was doing the ambassador work, the exopolitical ambassador work. And what I was basically doing was allowing my experiences in my life to be downloaded into some kind of a bank system so that they could understand how we think, how we function, why we do the things that we do. That was basically what it was about for me. But
almost
then
like zip files that are in your mind.
Yeah. It's very much like computer systems, actually. But then all of a sudden, I started having these, what I thought were really vivid dreams of being on this big ship, being with these other beings. And then this happened every single night for 3 months. It just happened every single night for 3 months.
Was it painful? Was there a noise?
Nope. Just go to sleep and wake up in the morning absolutely exhausted with all this stuff that I had been experiencing. So for me, dreams are kind of kind of vague and they don't make a lot of sense, and you start doing this and then you're somewhere else. This was nothing like this. This was so experiential. I can't describe it any other way. So the other thing is there's a time difference. So I was gone at night for 3 months, but my experience was more like 3.5 years. And while I was on the ship, I made friends. I learned a lot about how the big ships work. It's completely different than what most people think, because we live in kind of a nuts and bolts kind of reality. I found out that they have not only do they have the exopolitical ambassador positions, and there's thousands of us on Earth that participate in this all the time. This is not unique to Karen. Then I found out that there was a pre-settlement program where we actually do expeditions to other worlds, and they're very scientific, and it's mostly all just data gathering. And then I also found out about the resettlement program, where they will actually resettle humanoids onto planets that have everything except no humanoids on them, so that there are all kinds of reasons for resettlement. And it was a lot of experience packed into this 3-month period. And of course, I tried telling people, and they just kind of went, okay.
Did you immediately start telling people, or?
Yeah, I was all excited. Are you kidding? I was all excited. I was so happy about what was happening,
You didn't think there was going to be any kind of like reaction, or it was just this sort of genuine pouring out of being thrilled that this experience happened to you? I would be so afraid to share that with anyone.
No, I really wanted to share it. So I shared it, like, for instance, with my grown children, with my relatives, and a few of my friends. But I always, you know what it felt like? It felt like, I don't know if you've ever been in an elevator and the guy next to you or the woman next to you lets out a great big stinky fart, right? It was like that. It was like everyone just sort of sees us up and doesn't say anything, and they won't look you in the eye. And I kind of went, okay, I'm not going to be telling people about this anymore, because nobody believes me and everyone just thinks I'm crazy. And so what I did was I just sort of went inside with it all, and then produced the Quantum Health Transformation Program, which is a series of over 20 videos that have all the information that I was supposed to share with humankind. Now, it's not the only way to do things. It's a way of doing it. It's the actual program that I developed and I follow myself. And and at the beginning of each video, I tell people, don't feel like you have to run out and do what I'm doing. Just use this as a jumping off point. Use this to stimulate your own imagination, your own desires, your own what you want out of your life, to give you ideas that you can step outside of the box. It's safe to do so, and you can have the kind of life that you design yourself. So that's how that all came about.
Yeah, I want to go back a little bit, Karen. You mentioned something I thought was really interesting. Typically, when people speak in terms of paranormal investigations, engaging with entities or ghosts, or accidentally crossing the path of a shadow person or a demon, there's this fear that they're going to bring that entity or spirit with them wherever they go. It'll attach to them. But what I thought was really interesting that you said was that you can kind of absorb the energy and ergo the mental state of that ghost or spirit of long past. And like you said, you had these kind of suicidal thoughts. So that was a really interesting take on that. I'd never heard that before. Have you heard of that, where people experience they're taking on the mental states or emotions of a past being? And is that the fault of that being, or is it just an accidental crossing of the streams?
I think it's a crossing of the streams. I think that all the energies are here all the time, and then depending on the receiver wavelength of our brain and our sensitivity and our health and a whole lot of things, what happens is once we basically set ourselves up with a certain frequency that we operate on, and then we will attract experiences and beings that are of like frequency once we're there. So once I elevated my frequency again, I had absolutely no more problems at all, because I'm sure that the negative energies and paranormal stuff is going on all everywhere. I'm sure we're living in a great big soup.
So is it possible that you can cross paths with a joyous spirit and just be filled, with happiness?
Oh, that's happened to me so many times. Oh my God. Yeah. And I don't know. It's really like, I spent a lot of time alone, because after being with these beings on the ship, so that's the other thing so this is how this is really out there. But basically what happens is
we're already out there, Karen.
We're already out there. Yeah, I'm at home sleeping in my bed, right? But my consciousness is transferred. And the big ship that I go to, they actually have 3 kinds of clones. So you can go there just etherically, and you can, it's kind of like remote viewing. And they know when you're there. It's really cool because they're physical. These beings are actually ETs. They're physical beings living on a ship. They've lived there all their lives. They're multi-generational. They're not attached to any particular planet system, right? They know you're there. But they also have a really cool cloning system. So they have 3 kinds of clones. They have a kind of a one size fits all. So if I need physicality and I'm going back to the big ship, my consciousness is transferred into the clone. And you can tell the beings apart because they all have their own unique ways of being and the way they hold their head and the way they do things. You can kind of tell them apart. But the clones are essentially kind of a one size fits all. Then you can also get a genetic a genetic clone. I have one on the big ship that's identical to my physical here, except that it's in way better shape. It's way healthier, and I can use that when I want. There's a 3rd kind of a clone that's a utilitarian. So say, for instance, you need a specialized kind of body that has kind of built-in tools because you're going to be working on something specific that your regular body wouldn't be able to survive. You can actually use a utilitarian clone. I've never used one of those, though. They're pretty cool. I've seen a few of them.
So the clone is like an avatar?
No, a clone is a physical body that's grown, that our consciousness can be transferred from here to there so that we can have physicality when we're there.
But it only functions or moves or lives or thinks through you. It doesn't have its own consciousness.
Nope, doesn't have its own consciousness. Nope, it doesn't. And it's put kind of in a state of stasis. Now I've only been back once since then, to be honest. It was last year, and I went etherically. I didn't go physically. So I'm basing everything on that 3-month experience I had. But it was like 3.5 years. So I'm still unpacking it. I don't have all of my memories. I'm just finished putting together several different versions of basically a little bit expanded of the presentation I did at Forbidden Knowledge NewsCon last year, which was an overview of the whole program. And I put it into 3 parts because it's just a ton of information. Part 1, part 2, and part 3. And so you can easily find that on my YouTube channel. Sure. If you want to catch up on my adventures.
And what is the resettlement program exactly? And what do you do? Do you participate?
I think one day I will. But to be honest with you, I'm pretty much in love with living on the big ship. The ships are huge. They're like massive cities.
And where are the ships?
I don't know where they are. Like, I don't have the scientific data to tell you any of that. That's why I'm sure, people might think I'm a big fat liar, and that's okay because I don't have tangible proof. All I know is that it's intergalactic. And our galaxy, if you just try to wrap your head around how big that is, it's awe-inspiring, and it just blows my mind. And then to think that there's so many galaxies, and just even there's so many solar systems just in our what I call our star cluster. It's mind-boggling.
Oh, it
is. But these beings, they live on this massive ship, and there's quite a few ships like that. Each ship has its own culture, its own community. people will immigrate and emigrate between the big ships, but they always live on the big ships. They don't live on the planets. So I kind of am hoping to do that. But the pre-settlement program is where we do expeditions. We go down on planets and we basically gather scientific data, because when this group resettles people, it has to be done properly so that there's no harm to come to the biosphere, to the animals, to the ecosystems. Like, it has to be done properly. And that's what these scientific pre-settlement expeditions, and it was part of my training to be involved in a few of these. Now,
So
the
are we talking
resettlement...
about, I'm sorry, Karen, are we talking about intergalactic refugees?
Yes, because what happens is, believe it or not, planets go through cycles. Planets go through evolution. Right now, our planet's going through a bit of an evolution. And so what happens is sometimes you'll get ice ages, or you'll get comets, or you'll get earthquakes and volcanoes and God knows what. Not to mention crappy governments that abuse the citizens, and all kinds of reasons why planets are just not safe. So when beings on a planet are at risk of extinction or near extinction level events, or when we evolve to the point where we have something positive to offer the ecology of the omniverse, and we really desire to be moved to another system, maybe we want an experiment, a place to unfold, or maybe we just want to resettle and start fresh somewhere. Like, this happens all the time.
So how does that affect us living here now?
Well, I've been told that if enough of us can raise our frequency and become the kind of beings that can adapt to resettlement and want resettlement, and that we're not going to bring the infection of psychopathy with us, which means we all carry a certain amount of this stuff. Yeah. And if, so those of us who work our way through get to a certain point where we become valuable to resettlement, then we will have that option. Their hope, they're not going to come in here and rescue us. I'll just tell you that point blank. Their hope is, because they know we have everything we need to solve our own problems and to elevate ourselves. So what they're hoping we will do is elevate ourselves and solve our own problems, and then we will come into a natural interplanetary and intergalactic union with other beings at that point. But if we want to stay with our heads up our butts and keep doing things the way they've been done the last 1,000 years, they're not gonna just come in here and evacuate everybody, because we'd be spreading all our BS onto the big ships, onto other planets. Why would they do that? Let's keep it contained so we can grow and evolve here.
So it's almost like a psychological virus. All right. So anyone who wants to call in just a few minutes, the Paranormal Radio app line is 855-472-5483. That's 85-KGRA live. If you have questions for Karen Holton, Bill Skywatcher, our producer, is waiting for you to call. We'll get you queued up and we'll get you on the air. So I do have a question, and it's building on a question from Kathleen here. And her question is, do you ever come face-to-face with a reptilian? How did that go? My follow-up to that is, how many different types of beings have you seen, aliens?
I've seen a lot of different kinds of beings, but I am completely ignorant when it comes to any of the beings that have contact with Earth. I don't know. I wouldn't know a reptilian if well, maybe I would. I don't know. But I wouldn't know them from an Anunnaki to a Palladian. I wouldn't know, because that's not the group that I tapped into. So I'm sorry. I don't know. But the group that's the other thing too, is, so the group that I do tap into, they're from all different star clusters. They're from all over the place. They emigrate. Then they also form relationships and have offspring that are also hybrid from all these different kinds of beings. But the one thing I can say is they don't look that different than us. The kind of diversity we see on our planet is about the extent of the diversity that you would see on the big ship. Okay,
And
so
of a singular race with diversity, or different race, like different completely biological races from like different planets.
nope, they're like you know how how humans look on Earth. We come in all different shades and tones of skin color. You know, some of us got big noses, some of us got little noses, some of us got funny ears. You know, I mean, you could take people that were born in the same town and they've never intermarried with people from other towns, and you would still see tremendous diversity, right? Some people are prettier than others, some are bigger than others, the same kind of diversity, but nothing that is that weird. Now, there's one being that I met that was outside of that, and he did look a lot like us, but he lives in a liquid environment, and he has no hair. He had no hair at all. And those type of beings, though, that was only one time. They were in a contained area because they had to have the fluid, but the fluid they were in was not water because it has the same oxygen content as what we experience here on Earth. So humans can actually go in to their environment for short periods of time and do quite well because our lungs can act as gills. But besides that, they're just very similar. The difference is most of them are taller with larger frames. They're all in exquisite, perfect health in ways that we can't even imagine. They're very beautiful because of the way they're so healthy, and they're our next state of evolution. So they're not that far ahead of us. They're only one spot, I would say, ahead of us. And they have all different kinds of culture, and even within their own culture, there's all kinds of diversity. So I'm really sorry. I wish I could say they look like this, and this is how they do this and that, but I can't. And then again,
can you say that they're bipedal, 2 arms, 2 legs?
They're just like us. In fact, most of them, you wouldn't even know they weren't human.
I see.
If you ran into them on the street. They're so close, except they're bigger and they're more beautiful. And their vibe, you pick up their vibe, and right away you feel great just from being around them. So there are differences. But no, there's nothing like the way what's portrayed on Earth as, you know, the reptilians and the arachnids. And I never saw anything like that. No, they were very similar to us. You know, some have more hair than others. And the culture is very free. These people they don't do construct. So we're born into a construct. We don't even really recognize it because we're born into it. We've lived in this environment all our life. Well, they've never been in a construct. They're completely free beings.
And what is our construct?
What is our construct? Our construct is an overlapping of basically a control. It's a control mechanism where it gives a lot of power to only a few and very little power to the majority. So it includes economic system, religious systems, government systems. That is what I refer to as the construct. And it's also, we internalize it because we're born into it, and we've been taught, and many generations have been taught, and it forms our schema, or even our psychology on how we think and how we perceive. It's kind of like asking a fish, what's it like to live in water? Well, it doesn't know it. It's always lived in water, right?
Right, sure.
Yeah.
Well, that kind of ties back to trauma, right? Because you can be conditioned to thinking something is normal. And someone says, well, that's wrong. And you're like, no, it's not wrong. And you don't even think twice about it. Meanwhile, the trauma is playing out inside of you and you're dealing with it unbeknownst to you. So these species, do they have religion? Do they have anything that we can relate to in this regard?
Nope. The only thing they have that y'all can relate to is love. They are peaceful, they're gentle, they're kind, they're patient, and they're really patient with us because they all communicate on a telepathy level. They don't use words. They don't talk the way we do. And there's another example of the construct that we're born into. We're given a language. Well, that's a set of symbols. and it contains us because we can only operate within that symbol system. So all the things that aren't talked about, we don't have the symbols or language for, we have a hard time keeping that in our consciousness. But they're telepathic.
Isn't that healthy for us, though? Because I can't imagine human beings being telepathic. I just see things going haywire really fast.
It's not the way you think, okay? First of all, telepathy comes in layers. So beings on the big ship have the ability to shield themselves. Now, when you want to communicate with another being, it's obvious generally by your body language, and you do a bit of a psychic handshake where you actually put it out there and get permission before you communicate, because they can shut you out completely. They can let you in for a private conversation. They can include you in group conversation. They have the ability to do that, and they also have the ability to shield their young until they're old enough to do that for themselves. So it's not like a big mess. But then me going up to the ship, it was like it would be like me throwing red paint all over everybody. You know, they could shield themselves if they want to, but if you just start thinking or emoting what I will call loudly for our conversation, you know, it gets all over the place. It's a mess, but they're very patient. They're very, very patient, very, very loving. And then there's ways of training, that we can train ourselves once we're there too, so that we learn how to contain our telepathy. And we're all capable of doing this. All humanoids are capable of doing this. Just we haven't even been given the language that says this is even possible for most of us on Earth. And so we don't know that we can do that. And so I was very fortunate to have a lot of training. And
when you're life coaching other people, is this part of your conversation with the ETs, or, you know, how much of this is actually practical application?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not really sure what you're asking me.
Oh, so, you know, when you're sharing your wisdom, right? Like how to live better, your experiences directly with the ETs, like how does that apply to that sort of life coaching of other people and helping them?
Well, I tend to coach people to make contact for themselves so that they can have their own direct experience. So they don't need to come through me.
Okay.
So that's one thing. Another thing is people used to say, oh, can you ask them this or that, or what do I need this, or what crystals are good for me, whatever. I don't do that anymore because they can do that for themselves. But what I will do is I will coach them on the Quantum Health Transformation Program, which is free. But if they want the coaching, of course, then, they can pay me for my time. But the basic program is in very universal terms, very demystified. You don't need any arcane knowledge or anything like that to understand it. It's been super simplified for a reason. And it's, again, just the sort of the stepping off point. So I don't want people to think I'm a lousy coach, but at the same time, I will always help people to understand that they have the power, they have the ability, and they can do it, and give some practical suggestions so that they can start working on that.
Yeah. How often do you have contact with the ETs themselves?
Like I said, after that initial 3-month period, I've only been back to the ship that I'm aware of, and that's the catch, once. And that was with the assistance of Bob, and I did it by remote viewing, and they knew that I was there. But beyond that, if I need information, like for instance, I'm working on a book that's got all my ET experiences in it. And so when I get stuck at a certain point or something doesn't make sense to me, or it just comes to me. I can't even explain it. It's not like Fred is telling me this or that. It just comes. I can't even really explain it. It's so much of it is beyond what I have vocabulary even for.
Sure, I can imagine. I mean, I would imagine these species are intellectually levels above us if they're able to, traverse the universe, come here, communicate with us, remain hidden. I always think UFOs, they show themselves. I don't think that they're accidentally caught on camera, right? Because if they're so advanced, how can that be, right?
Yeah.
So it seems to me that they are way beyond our own abilities. But can we get to that level? I mean, can our brains biologically evolve to that point, or are we limited?
No, we're not. We're not limited. We're not limited. We're only limited by our belief systems. And that's the thing. And that's why the quantum health transformation is actually divided up into sort of three groups of 3 steps. There's 9 steps altogether. The first 3 are for raising awareness and opening your mind to start thinking differently and overcoming the binary concepts, because we're just taught there's good, there's bad, there's up, there's down, there's black, there's white. What about all the options in between, right? And so it helps people to expand their minds and to understand that a lot of what we see around the earth, like for instance, even crystals, these are technologies. We just forgot how to use them. So, remembering how to use technologies, and we kind of know, because someone will be really, really attracted to rose quartz, but they won't really know why. They know they need that, right? So it's not an intellectual process as much as it is actually a feeling process. I would say it's more of a feeling process. One of the hardest things is to shut off the mind and get it to just simmer down so that we can, be aware of other things. So anyway, the second 3 steps is all about detoxification, how to detoxify your body, your mind, your emotions, and how to detoxify from the construct. And then the last 3 steps is basically what I would call personal ascension tools. But you kind of got to start at the bottom and work your way up. And I've done it kind of weird where the first lesson is step 9, and then you do step 8, and then you do step 7, and each one builds a foundation for the next step. And so the last 3 steps are difficult to really do anything with if you haven't gone back and done the other steps. So that's how I've arranged it that way. I know it's weird, but it's just how I did it.
We have a question from Kathleen again. Can they play with your mind? Like 2 people seeing spaceship differently, like round and triangle. So I think from eyewitness standpoint, when they see UFOs, right, are they projecting into your mind what you're actually seeing?
I don't know. I don't have a simple answer. I can guess that it's a combination of what they want you to see and what you're capable of recognizing. See, some people think they're not having contact, but they are, but they don't recognize it for what it is.
Do they have an agenda for you? Do they say to you, this is what we want you to do at some point?
Yes and no. I have a tremendous amount of personal choice and freedom to create how I want. But the Quantum Health Transformation Program was pretty specific. The points that are in there, they wanted me to produce that for humanity.
They is the ET or the other intelligences?
Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I think it's a group effort. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I understand the collective. And so the question I haven't asked you is, what is the universe? Like, what is the source? What is this whole thing? What's from all the conversations you've had, what is it?
I think it's a tool. Again, I think it's a tool. I think we're divinity diversified, and I think it's a tool for universal consciousness to grow and expand and learn. And so I think the whole thing is about soul development.
Is this it? The only universe? The Big Bang started, and then eventually it just all ends, or is there something? There's a
multiverse. So what happens is, like, there's Karens and other universes doing things a little bit differently. What's really cool is we can trade places. That's really cool. So, for instance, and it's really hard to tell which came first, the chicken or the egg, or whether it's a potato or a potato. And I'll give you an example. I discovered a method of going back and changing my past. Mm-hmm. So when I changed my past, a certain aspect of my past, I changed it. When I changed it, did I actually move into another universe where the past was the way I changed it to be? Or did I change the past here? I don't know. I'm not that smart. I don't even know why I have the privileges I have, because I'm just not the smartest knife in the drawer. I'm just not. But I know what I know, and I'm very open because I'm in such good hands, and the love is real. Love is the only thing we can depend on as being absolutely real.
Do you know, there's something about that. I've always felt that way. You know, that deeper sense of whatever love is, it seems to be the freedom that we can all attain. It helps us get there. It is there. That's the only way I can kind of explain it. But again, we're human beings. We have faults. We have challenges. We have psychology. We have traumas, as we've mentioned multiple times tonight, that we have to get through in order to tap into that love. You know, but no, life isn't perfect. So even when you can tune into that grand love, right? Things are going to happen. Challenges are going to kind of bring you back down again. So is love the alpha and the omega?
It could be, but I also know that life without contrast is not satisfying. So, for instance, when I put a great deal of effort into producing or creating something, which I believe I'm co-creating with universal consciousness or God, boy, do I get a great feeling afterwards. And things that terrify me, and I do them anyway, holy smokes, do I ever have some amazing results. So my life has changed in ways I never dreamed possible because of that. So I don't know if that answered your question.
Well, I think we don't know the answer, right? I think that's
it's
the truth. But we're speculating and we're reaching for answers, and I am comfortable not knowing the answers, and I think a lot of people are uncomfortable not knowing the answers, and so they need to believe in something. Mm-hmm. Is there danger in blind faith or a belief like that?
I think there's a danger in any belief, because belief, in my opinion, is supposed to be something flexible, fluid, and evolving. So I believe that our thoughts and our perceptions and all of this is much more fluid than what we've been taught. And that's another thing, getting back to the construct. The construct is going to tell you what's real, what's not real, that this desk is solid, that you can't do that, you can't do this, and freeing up the mind. And there again, that's one of the blessings that come through trauma. Trauma shakes all that up and kind of brings the house down so you can rebuild it how you want.
Yeah. Is nature important?
Oh yeah, it's all a part of the big thing. I mean, I've seen some amazing things. The fact that I can communicate with bugs, the fact that I can sit next to a fish tank and tell the fish that there's food over in one corner of the tank and they all swim there. Our life is miraculous, but we don't know it because we're either, and I'm not faulting anyone because I am there and been there myself, but we have addictions and distractions, and we have so many things going on that we're being told is real that might not be real, and you try to get any accurate information on any one health issue on this planet. It's like pulling teeth. So it's a very magical world we live in. For instance, a lot of people don't know that water has consciousness. And if you don't believe me, trying to remember the gal who just proved it recently with taking pictures of freezing water and taking pictures. It's sort of the next quantum leap from Dr. Emoto's work. Austin. Her last name is Austin. Anyway, so she's proven that you can actually have a relationship with water. So there is an intelligence in the water. There's intelligence in sunlight. There's intelligence in the earth. there's intelligence in the air. And that's what prana comes from, the air. So there's all these sources of divinity that we can pull into our bodies and use. But if we don't know about them, we're never going to try. And so in order to know about them, maybe we have to relax some of our belief systems a little bit.
Do you think meditation is the best way to get in touch with source?
In my opinion, yes. The short answer is yes. However, I don't hold any one version of meditation over another. I'll give you an example. Some of us have a very difficult time quietening the mind. Mm-hmm. So if we want to meditate and have no thoughts at all, that's a pretty tall order. Most people will not keep practicing because it's just too hard. There's another way of doing it where you can create heart coherence, where you just put your hand on your heart and you think about someone that you love. Mm-hmm. And so instead of it emptying, you fill it, but you fill it with the right things. Uh-huh. So you fill it with an intense feeling of love and appreciation for somebody and all the things you love about them. And pretty soon, wow, you feel the connection between your heart and your mind, and your whole body starts to glow, and you know you're getting yourself into that frequency. Even just being so tired and you get into a hot tub full of minerals, like we started off the conversation talking about, until you just relax and you just give up the resistance. That's another way of doing it. So I think, yes, meditation is definitely the shortest route to communication with other beings, but I don't think that we should all have to do that the same way.
You were able to communicate with insects. There are psychic mediums out there who communicate with pets. Can you communicate with cats, dogs, or other animals?
Sometimes, but I'll tell you where I'm really good is with plants. And I know that sounds completely ridiculous. I don't expect anyone to believe anything I say because I know how it sounds. But plants are amazing and so easy to communicate with. So I'll just give you an example. I was out on my balcony where I used to live, and there was this little row of trees. And I just started appreciating them and feeling love for them. And I just really liked them. And I'm weird, so I talk to things. I talk to plants, and I talk to bugs, I talk to animals, I'll talk to anybody. And I started talking to them, and the tree branches started growing towards my balcony. None of the other on the row of trees started growing towards anyone else's balcony, but they started growing towards my balcony. And I said to them, if you can reach my balcony by Christmas, I'm gonna decorate you. And I was all excited. And then I woke up one day and I heard chainsaws and someone came out and cut down my trees, and I felt terrible because it was kind of my fault. I was the one encouraging them to have a relationship with me. Yeah. And then they went and cut them all down, and I felt terrible. I'm sorry. I just really like everything that's alive.
Is there a difference between a general consciousness and or repersonifying something onto plants that aren't actually there? I had a friend who she struggled. This was many years ago. She was vegan, and she also believed plants had consciousness. So if plants have consciousness, then how do you eat plants? And then if you don't eat plants, then what are you going to eat?
This is my thing. Like I've had a lot of health issues, okay? And so I was a raw vegan for a while, and it just destroyed my digestive system because I had these other issues that I hadn't looked after first. Mm-hmm. And so I ended up having to go and eat meat again. And I was devastated. So I went out and found meat that was from animals that were humanely treated and grass-fed and had nice lives. And then when it was time, they were humanely killed. And that was the meat that I ate. And so I was actually praying to their consciousness, saying, I'm so sorry I'm eating you. Like, it really messed with my head. And they said to me, Karen, we're in a really good place right now. And our reason for being alive is to reproduce, to add to the balance and harmony of the planet, and to provide food for those that are doing the evolutionary work. And I went, thank you. Then later, I thought, because I also believe that plants are conscious, and there's lots of experiments proving that they are conscious. And so I prayed to the plants and I said, I'm so sorry, I'm eating your little bodies and eating you, but I need to eat you to be alive. And you know what they said? This blew me away. They said, Karen, we have 3 reasons for being here: to reproduce, to add to the balance and harmony of the planet, and to serve as food. And so I don't hold veganism above an omnivore diet, because it's not about that. It's about being conscious that we are consuming life, and their life becomes part of us. And so having humane sources and clean and healthy sources of food, to me, that's my focus, right? So I try to eat local vegetables rather than have them brought in from the other part of the world. And, do you know what I'm saying? So I don't have a morality around food.
Yeah, I'm mostly vegetarian, but I do eat seafood on occasion. And sometimes I feel a little bit bad about that when I'm looking into fish's eyes. But, I don't judge anyone who hunts or eats meat, because, for millennia, this is how we have survived. We've been omnivores, we've been vegetarians, we've been carnivores. There is the circle of life.
Exactly.
So, for me, I choose a different way than someone else. I just personally can't eat mammals. I just can't do it. I felt too much affection shared between all kinds of different mammals. So that's just me, but I don't judge someone else because I understand.
Yes.
And this is interesting. This is from Old Dude. I talk to my cannabis plants, play music for them, touch them, pray for them. It's the finest cannabis you can find. I believe they have a collective consciousness somehow.
They absolutely do. They absolutely do. And the same is true for all of your plants. So I'll give you an example. I didn't, in my awakening, because I just wasn't born to all of this. It came to me. I had some plants out on my back patio. I was growing some tomatoes and some cucumbers and things. And I picked a tomato, and it was soft because it was so ripe. And I took it into the kitchen. I ran it under cold water, and it went completely firm. Like it was aware that it was now cold, and it changed in my hand. But I also believe that when we tend to our food and we grow some of our own food, there's an exchange of DNA just from handling it. There's an exchange of consciousness. There's an overlapping of consciousness. And I believe that food will then provide more of what you need as a unique being in friendship and harmony with that plant. And so I have a hard time eating anything, but I do eat, obviously, and my body is healing. And so I'm able to have more and more and more vegetables in my life. But there was a while there where I had to cut out vegetables completely. Holy smokes, that was a real shock and very hard on me psychologically. But then the more I open myself up to the plant world, the more I realize they know too. They've hooked little electrodes up to plants to communicate with them. And they've done all kinds of experiments proving that they do have a consciousness. And then they're all integrated in their consciousness. And then there's the whole root system and the whole fungal system. It's an amazing, miraculous reality if we can just open our eyes and make room to see some of this stuff.
Have you heard of the stoned ape theory? Where we evolved, our minds, our brains as humans evolved because of our exposure to psychedelic mushrooms or plants and things like that. Is that something that you've ever considered as a possibility?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I'm actually for psychedelics, but I got to tell you, they make me really sick. It doesn't matter what kind, they make me really sick. So unless I want to do a specific vision quest or something, I don't do them. But I got to tell you, this is really weird. When I do psychedelics, I have no contact with my higher beings. It's completely silent. And so people would think it would be the opposite. They would think, you do psychedelics, it opens you up to all these realms. No, to me, it's the opposite. I have all these realms normally when I do psychedelics. And I have done them a few times because there were times where I got stuck and it helped me to get unstuck.
Karen, thank you so much for hanging out with us tonight. I really appreciate it. If there's one thought you could leave us with, what would it be?
Believe in yourself, believe in your ability to achieve anything you desire, and believe that you're absolutely loved unconditionally, just as you are right now, which means warts and hairs and everything.
All right, everyone, check out Karen's website, KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. Karen, thank you so much. Have a wonderful night. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight on Paranormal Now, every Sunday, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on KGRA Radio, the best alternative source for your news in all things strange, high strangeness, even higher strangeness, and cryptozoology, ufology, whatever you can imagine. We cover it here on KGRADB.com. Stay tuned for Tracy Austin. And thank you to Eric Brager and our producer, Bill Skywatcher, for running this program every week. You do an enormous amount of work. Thank you, Bill. And until next time, everyone, live in mystery.